They found the hiker 2 miles from the trailhead, frozen solid, $100 of gear still strapped to his back, a down jacket, a titanium stove, a phone with no signal, everything money could buy, and it bought him nothing. Now put a man from 1830 in his place. 40 below in the Rockies, a wind coming down off the peaks that would cut through a wall, and all he's got is animal skins, a wool blanket, and a flintlock rifle. By every rule we live by today, that man is dead by morning. But he isn't. He walks out. He always walked out. We tell ourselves the mountain men were tougher than us. That's the easy answer, and it's a lie. They weren't tougher. They were smarter. They understood something about the cold that we have completely forgotten. And the forgetting is going to cost us. I'm Jeremiah Cole. I've spent a life on the old trails, and I'll tell you what the histories leave out. Come with me into a Rocky Mountain winter, and I'll show you what those men knew about the cold that we traded away for a thermostat. The 4 ways the cold kills a man, and the system they built to beat every one of them. Here's the first thing you have to understand. To the mountain man, cold wasn't weather. It was a predator. And like any predator, it had ways of hunting, 4 of them. He didn't have the fancy words for it, but he knew every one of those 4 killers the way he knew the faces of the men they'd already taken. The first killer is conduction, the theft of your heat straight through whatever you're touching. Sit on a cold rock, lie down on frozen ground, and the earth becomes a thief that never tires. It pulls the warmth out of your body from below faster than your fire can put it back, and a man can freeze to death from the ground up while his face is still warm from the flames. The mountain man's first act in any camp, before the fire, before the food, was to break that contact. A bed of pine boughs a foot thick. Dry grass, dry leaves, bark, anything that trapped a layer of dead air between his body and the ground. His buffalo robe did the same work, 40 pounds of hide with thousands of hairs, every one holding a pocket of still air. He never once underestimated the frozen earth. He'd buried men who did. The second killer is convection, the thief that rides the wind. Every gust that found its way through your clothes stripped off the thin skin of warm air your body fought all day to build. He didn't know the word wind chill, but he knew the arithmetic of it in his bones. 40 below with a 20-mile wind behaves like 70 below, and at 70 below, bare skin freezes in the time it takes to tell about it. So he built a wall against the wind. A brain-tanned buckskin shirt, a heavy wool coat, hide so densely grained the wind couldn't push through it. And he read the land for shelter, a rock outcrop, a thick stand of timber, a deep ravine, anywhere he could carve out a pocket of still air and hide in it. He was always hunting for the calm harbor in the middle of the storm. The third killer is radiation, and this one is silent. Even on a dead still night with no wind at all, your body throws heat off into the empty sky, and the winter sky takes it and gives nothing back. An uncovered head, bare hands, they bleed warmth into the dark. That will cap the mountain man war wasn't for looks. An uncovered head is a chimney, and today we know a man can lose up to 40% of his heat straight out the top of it. He wore his hat to sleep. He pulled that buffalo robe up over his head and plugged every leak he could find, because he knew that on a clear, cold night the temperature could fall another 20 degrees just from the sky drinking his fire. And the fourth killer, the worst one, the sneaking one, is evaporation. The mountain man knew that sweat in winter was a death sentence. Water leaving your skin carries heat away 25 times faster than dry air ever could. So a man who worked up a sweat chopping wood then stopped to rest was a man who just soaked his own shroud. That's why he dressed in layers he could shed and add back, not just to stay warm, but to stay dry. Peel a layer before you sweat. Put it back the second you stop. And never, ever trust cotton. Every trapper knew the saying, cotton kills, because a wet cotton shirt loses every bit of its warmth and starts pulling the heat right out of you. Wool was the opposite. Wool could soak up a third of its own weight in water and still keep you alive. That was the whole war, fought on 4 fronts, every hour of every winter day. Comment conduction. Below if you've ever felt the cold steal your heat straight through the ground you were sitting on. Now knowing the 4 killers is one thing. Beating them is another, and the mountain man's answer was his clothing. But not the way we think of clothing. To us a coat is one thing you put on and expect to work in a blizzard and a thaw alike. To him it was a living system, something he was adjusting all day long, adding and shedding to match his work and the weather. Get that balance wrong and the cold walked right in. The foundation was wool, next to the skin. Wool was the miracle of the frontier. It held a third of its weight in water and still kept most of its warmth when it was damp. and a man in the mountains was always going to get damp from snow or from his own sweat. Often it was greasy wool, still carrying its natural lanolin, which shed water and lasted years of hard use and stank of the animal it came off of. Over the wool came the buckskin, a brain-tan shirt that was his windproof shell, tough as anything, blocking the wind while still letting a little sweat breathe out so it didn't freeze against him. But buckskin had a fatal flaw. Soak it through and it goes heavy and stiff and useless. So he greased it with bear fat or beaver fat, worked the grease deep into the hide until it would shed a light snow. And for the real weather, his last wall, the capote. A long hooded coat cut from a heavy Hudson's Bay blanket, that dense oily wool shedding snow and rain, the hood over his head, the length of it down over his legs. A portable shelter he wore on his back. He was forever adjusting the whole system, dropping a layer when he swung the axe, dragging it back on the instant he stopped. Because he understood staying warm was a balance between the heat you make and the heat you lose, and losing that balance is how the sweat froze and the man went with it. Part 3, and if the 4 killers were the war, this was the weapon that won it. Fire. For the mountain man, making fire fast and making it reliable in any weather was the single most important thing he knew how to do. Fire was warmth, fire was cooked food, fire was dry clothes, fire was keeping the wolves back from the dark. A man with no fire in that country was a dead man who hadn't finished dying yet. His fire kit was built on what he called the Holy Trinity: flint, steel, and char cloth. A sharp edge of flint struck down a curved piece of high-carbon steel, shaving off tiny burning slivers of the metal, throwing a shower of sparks. And those sparks fell on char cloth, linen, or cotton cooked in a sealed tin until it was black and brittle, tinder that would catch a single spark and hold it as a glowing coal instead of flaring up and dying. That was the secret. That was the bridge between a spark that lasts a heartbeat and a flame that lasts the night. He'd tip that glowing ember into a bundle of shredded cedar bark or dry grass, fold it closed, and breathe on it. Slow and steady, not too hard or he'd blow it out, not too soft or he'd starve it, until it took with a rush and roared to life. Comment, char cloth, below if you've ever tried to make it yourself. And because he was no fool, he never had just one way. He carried a burning glass to catch the sun on a clear day. He knew the bow drill to pull fire out of nothing but wood and sweat. The man who could only make fire one way, he'd tell you, was a dead man waiting on the weather to prove it. Then there was the wood itself, a whole language most of us can't read anymore. He could look at a tree and know its name, its nature, and its use. Soft woods like pine and fir burned hot and fast to get a blaze going. Hardwoods like oak and hickory burned slow and steady and left a bed of coals to last the night. Standing deadwood, still up off the ground, stayed dry inside even in a downpour. He knew birch bark would burn soaking wet. That cedar made the best tinder. That cottonwood gave more smoke than heat. That wasn't book learning. That was earned, tree by tree, winter by winter. And he didn't just pile the wood and light it, he built it. A reflector fire with a wall of logs behind it to throw the heat forward into his shelter and double it. A star fire, logs laid like the spokes of a wheel, fed inward through the night so it burned slow and needed almost no tending. A Dakota fire hole dug into the ground with an air tunnel feeding it, so it burned hot and hidden even in a hard wind. To a man alone out there, with nothing but the wind and the wolves for company, that fire was more than warmth. It was the one thing holding back the loneliness. It was sanity. Part 5, and this is the piece we've forgotten the hardest. The mountain man's best weapon against the cold wasn't on his back or in his kit. It was his own body, a furnace, and he knew exactly what to feed it. Fat. His diet would turn a modern doctor white. Pounds of meat a day, and he went for the fattiest cuts every time. Tongue, liver, marrow, the thick back fat off a buffalo. He prized a beaver tail, near solid fat, roasted till the skin blistered off. He was burning 5,000-6,000 calories a day just to stay alive and do his work, and most of that fuel was fat. He knew a thing we've buried entirely, rabbit starvation. A man can eat lean meat till his belly's full and still starve to death, because without fat his body can't even use the protein. The mountain men had a name for it. They'd watched it kill, so he didn't hunt for meat, he hunted for fat. A bear just before its winter sleep, packed with it. A buffalo cow in the fall with 6 inches of back fat off a summer of grass. And he preserved that fuel like the treasure it was, rendering tallow that kept for months. Drying jerky, pounding pemmican from dried meat and fat and berries. a pound of it carrying 3,000 calories and keeping for years. In a world that's taught itself to fear fat and chase lean, that man knew the truth we threw away. With no furnace in the wall and no store down the road, fat isn't the enemy. Fat is survival. Comment beaver tail below if you'd be brave enough to try it. So what did the mountain men understand about the cold that we've forgotten? Here's the hard answer. It was never a single trick. It was a whole way of seeing the world, and we've lost it because we no longer need it. We see cold as an inconvenience. We turn a dial, zip a high-tech jacket, climb into a heated truck, and we call that mastering the cold. It isn't. We didn't master anything. We just paid other men and other machines to stand between us and the truth. And we forgot the truth was even there. And that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. All that comfort made us soft, and soft makes you fragile. The power goes out, the truck won't start, the road's closed, the shelves go empty, and a modern man standing in his own cold house discovers he doesn't know a single thing his great-grandfather knew by heart. He's got everything, and he's forgotten how to fight. The mountain man had no such illusions. He never thought he was in control. He knew he was a small, fragile thing in a country that didn't care whether he lived, and the cold would kill him without hate and without hurry the moment he made a mistake. So he didn't fight the cold. He learned it. He respected it. Every skill he owned had been tested where failing meant dying. And he knew what worked because he'd seen what didn't, and buried the men it belonged to. That's the whole lesson, and it's this. Survival was never about what you carried. It was about what you knew, not conquering the cold, understanding your place inside it. So the next time a hard wind finds you and cuts straight through whatever you're wearing, don't think about your gear. Think about those men and ask yourself the only question that ever mattered out there. What have we forgotten, and what is it going to cost us to remember it too late? Next time, I'll show you the water every trapper trusted that killed him slower than any starvation. Until then, respect the cold. It has never once respected you.